What messages are you giving out? Not just with the words you use, but with your body language too. Hmm. Welcome to Midlife Unlimited, the podcast for women who want more. I'm your host, Kate Porter, the Midlife Metamorphosis Coach, and I'm delighted to be joined by my rather fabulous guest today, Dr. Beth Dawson, to give a taste of our audio episode that's available now wherever you listen to your podcasts, how to find your communication style in midlife. Now, we're both sitting here in a heat wave, but this is going to be, we got some hot tips because our episode is rather fabulous. So welcome, Dr. Beth. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much, Kate. It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Now, I love our episode because I think body language is absolutely fascinating. And obviously, so do you, because it's your speciality, communication in general. And
Yeah.
midlife, we hear the phrase a lot about reinvention. And I will, warning to viewers, we do use the A word in our episode because we can't think of an alternative. And although authentic is terribly overused, which I think is really, really sad, when it comes to finding our midlife communication style, being authentic really is the only thing to be, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think and we talked about this. I think in midlife, there's a sort of a little bit of a contradiction. So we do become, and I think that women do start to feel a little bit more invisible because we
Mm,
see less of ourselves in the media.
yeah,
Okay, so note to the media, we need to see more of us, please.
yeah,
Um, but I think midlife does bring a kind of a liberation. So we start to feel less of this, we want to people please a bit less. We feel a little bit sort of like we give a few less,
yeah. Oh,
can I
yeah,
say the F word? A few less fucks. We're sort of this pressure to sort of like please, confidence becomes less performative,
mm,
so we do have this liberation, but there's a little bit of a sort of a contradiction going on because it's true that we can also feel a little more sort of invisible because as I said, we see
yeah,
ourselves less in the media. We know what it's like, there's still a lot of ageism out there, especially in our society. So yeah, and it's important to kind of think and maybe rethink, our body
abs
language, our communication style, and authenticity is
yeah.
everything.
And what
Absolutely.
we do see in the media as well can trigger terrible bouts of comparisonitis because we can see, oh my goodness, I should be looking like this. I should be behaving like that. I don't feel this confidence. I don't feel I'm ready to tell the word, everyone, F it. This is my this is my
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
And we can literally hold ourselves back because that's what we're used to doing, isn't it? We're used to not making ourselves heard, or we're like, okay, I don't feel heard, but that's the way it is. That's the
yeah.
way it's got to be. We just accept it, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we know as well, I mean, the reality is as well in middle age that we do go through a lot of physical changes as well. We know
Yeah.
that. And with those physical changes, we do sort of, question, how we are showing up, how we
Mm,
use our body. Our body is changing. We know that, and that's, and I think there's sort of like a passage that we have to kind of go through and decide, who are we or
yeah.
who do we want to be in midlife? And we can absolutely choose who we want to be and how we show up. We can absolutely do that. And it's true, like I said, there's a bit of a paradox. We're sort of overlooked a little bit in the media. As I said, we need more of us out there
Yeah.
in the media, please, more of us. We're overlooked a little bit. And so we're sort of tending to feel that we're not really seeing, representations necessarily that we want to see of ourselves in the media. But it's also a brilliant time, as you said, Kate, for reinvention. And
Mm,
we can absolutely reinvent ourselves. And this is it. We can totally decide how we want to show up and how we want to communicate. And you talked about authenticity. I often say to women, authenticity is not about being necessarily the loudest in the room.
no.
It's about being ourselves and being comfortable. And if we want to be the loudest in the room, go for it. Why not? But we don't have to be.
No.
We don't have to be the loudest in the room to have the most impact. And there are lots of ways, and we talk about that on the podcast. I think that's amazing. I loved our discussion. The podcast is brilliant. Go and listen to it, everyone, because it's just full of so many different, tips and gems of, how to communicate. And there are so many different ways that we can, communicate with authenticity without necessarily being loud or, whatever. We can choose how we want to show up. We
That's
can,
such an important point, though, because often, whether it's a social event or a business event, it can be so daunting, particularly if you don't know anyone or you only vaguely know people. That feeling of, I need to make an entrance, I need to be memorable. And then what happens? We put the mask on. And
yeah,
Midlife Unlimited and me and you, we're all about ripping off that mask and actually being the real us. Now,
yeah,
obviously, that to be the real us, we need to actually get to know ourselves again, don't we? And actually unleash what feels right. And as you say, it's finding our midlife communication style, which may have evolved. It may be completely different to how we've been used to showing up. But I love the phrase as well. You say we really can make communication our superpower. Now,
yes,
this is, as I say, obviously, we're not a business podcast. We're about the whole woman. And that's what this is all about.
yeah,
It's about communicating in personal relationships, in friendships, in business relationships. But in our audio episode, and I know we're going to talk about some of the top tips now, but you share these amazing, simple sometimes, because sometimes it can be the simplest things, can't it, that can really open up new ways of communicating or make us really think about, because I always say it's not just what you say, it is really is how you say it. And
absolutely.
that I think is never been more important than now when so many relationships are changing, we're trying new things. We want to be as sure as we can that the ethos that we're giving off is actually what we want it to be.
Absolutely. Sorry, Kate, I had to
That's
cough.
all right, carry on.
Absolutely. And it's Maya Angelou who says, you often forget what somebody said, but you never forget how they made you feel. And it's true that the tone that we use, I mean, these are, it might sound unimportant, but actually, this really counts. The tone that we use, the gestures that we're using, facial expressions. There's a lot of things. And then, you said that we talked about making communication your superpower. Absolutely. We should all make communication our superpower because
Mm.
everything that we do is
Yeah.
communication. It's all about how we communicate. Whether it's in the morning with, saying hi to the neighbor, whether it's negotiating, you know, um,
Business
a,
deals or all
a
sorts.
business
Yeah.
deal, a salary increase, whatever it is, whether it's relationships, improve your communication and you can improve all your relationships and improve, sorry, sounds so cliched, but
No.
improve your life. I mean, you really can. Absolutely, communication can be your
And it
superpower.
just made me think of something because often if we are building up to having that conversation, whether it's a personal conversation or a business conversation, because I say the two things, we are a whole being, we are a whole person.
Yeah.
Often, and I know I've done this, we can almost rehearse, we can pre-plan what we're going to say,
Yes.
but we don't rehearse the how we're going to say it. And I'm sure things like standing in front of a mirror, maybe, and actually looking at what we look like when we're imparting our point could be quite
Absolutely.
a big eye opener, couldn't it? Because I know I
100%.
flap. I'm a
Yeah.
massive flapper. I look like I'm doing the Charleston half the time, and I nod a lot as well, even if I'm not necessarily agreeing with people.
I love it. I mean, the thing about the flapping, I mean, this can be, this is an interesting one actually, because it can also be a way of sort of like, generating energy. We talk about, those movements, but it can also be distracting. So if
Oh,
I was working with you, for example, I would say, well, it depends when you're flapping. If you're flapping, if you're talking about something excitedly in a, a party atmosphere or a party, an evening, then, fine, why not? But if this is a, more of a serious conversation and you're sort of
or
this sort of,
even in this
yeah.
scenario, when we're recording the video podcast, I have to be quite careful not to sit on my hands. But
Sitting on
it
your
makes
hands.
you, it does. Anyone who's not sure how they come across, just
Yeah.
do a little personal video zoom of yourself, not to share with anyone, but you'll be amazed on the little things that you pick up.
Absolutely. And that's what something, one of the things that I do in my workshops is that I look at the non-verbal communication that's coming across. 100%. You're so right. And, it's thinking about, you just said something really important there is that we often rehearse what we're going to say. So of course, verbal, we are verbal creatures. We can talk. We often rehearse what we're going to actually say, but we don't necessarily rehearse how we're going to say it.
No.
We don't think of the some of the finer details, the small details. Even something like, I'll say to women that I work with, things like positioning. Where are you positioning yourself?
Mm,
If there's a meeting, where are you going to sit? If it's a family dinner, where are you sitting? Where are you seated? If you're at a cocktail and, it's all about standing up and mingling and whatever, how are you positioning yourself? Are you aware of that? And it's sort of like thinking about some of these smaller details that
mm,
people don't necessarily think about, but are really impactful. I mean, research tells us that actually nonverbal communication is actually more impactful than verbal communication. And when we think about it, we've all heard that sort of, the fact that we make more of an impact in the first sort of like 7, 8, whatever seconds
mm.
that we see someone. I mean, and this goes back to our evolution. This goes back to prehistoric times, when we couldn't actually verbalize. And this is a question of, fight or flight. Is this person safe or part of
Yeah.
my in group, or is this person going to be somebody that might, want to, I don't know, kill me or something?
Well, it's just made me really think about that phrase, seeing someone across a crowded room. And I don't just mean in a romantic way, but
Yeah,
I really do get that
yeah,
sense. If I'm at an event, and I say it could be a party, it could be in a pub, it could be a
yeah,
business thing, and you can spot, I don't know if it's an age thing now, and hurrah if it is, but
yeah.
I seem to have developed this inner filter now of being able to spot my kind of people.
That's amazing. Yeah,
And it's like,
absolutely.
oh, I'll have a bit of her. Or
Yeah, yeah,
that,
absolutely.
and
Yeah,
whether it's just some kind of energy that I'm picking up on. I'm not saying I'm kind of woo woo. Well, I don't mind a bit of woo woo, but
yeah,
I don't know what it is. But I'm like,
yeah.
oh yeah, and I can tell. We talk a lot about smiling and fake smiles, and
Yeah,
honestly, we talk about giving less Fs.
yeah,
Don't even give me a fake smile. If you come up and meet me, if you don't give me a decent smile, I'm not talking to you. So there,
yeah,
because I haven't got time. My BS monitor, I think, has,
yeah,
or
yeah,
not just BS monitor. We talked about people pleasing, and I
yes,
think, I know, I've stamped that out.
yeah,
Absolutely no way now. Um, I think perhaps in ditching the people pleasing, the
yeah,
BS
yeah.
monitor, whatever you want to call it.
That's
I can just think, nah,
yeah, yeah. I think that's so true. I think that's true. And I think that is something, I think we've always had this, as you said, this instinct. And I think this is from,
that's
this,
the word I was looking for, isn't it?
yeah. Well, no, but what you've just said is absolutely right, is that we've always had this instinct. It's just that we sort of tend to, we're social creatures as well. And so this instinct is our, is sort of like it's, it's almost animalistic, if you like.
Yeah.
But we're social creatures. So we learn, in school, we learn how to, we sort of tend to filter that out. And, and we
I
also
think
know,
I accepted
yeah.
it as well, though. I think I did a lot of, because my self-worth was
Yeah,
below par,
yeah,
I almost thought this person's better than me. This
yeah,
person is not necessarily superior but oh, I need this person in my life. No, I
yeah,
don't.
yeah,
But I thought I did. I
yeah,
thought I needed this person. So in order to be beholden to this person, to win their approval,
yeah,
for them to want to spend some time with me,
yeah,
I need to behave in a certain way. I need to be beholden to them and tell them how fabulous they are in a bit of I was
yeah,
going to say bum licking. I will say bum licking. And it's like, no,
yeah.
I'm not doing that now. But gosh, the
Absolutely not.
hours I've spent
Oh, well,
bigging up people that do not are not worth the
not
time and
worth it.
energy.
Well, honestly, Kate, you're not alone. I've totally been there. I've totally done that. And I think that, as you say, there gets to a point where you suddenly like, you know what? Or not even suddenly, it just comes along and it's like, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't need to do that anymore. Um, but you did talk about sort of like, well, touched on something. You didn't mention it, but it's something that I wanted to talk about is what we often say in body language is mirroring.
Yes.
And you can mirror. So, you said sort of maybe, somebody that you don't necessarily want in your life, but you're kind of like maybe copying their gestures or doing things because you want to kind of, as you said,
Build rapport and yeah.
build rapport. But we can still mirror. But I often recommend mirroring, obviously, with somebody that you do want to build rapport with, because
Mm.
it does work. We're looking at people that seem similar to us, and it's true that like you said, we do have this instinct, and we all have it, and we all know immediately, absolutely immediately, who is going to be good for us and
Yeah.
who isn't. And it's about really, really tuning into that, accepting it, and listening and believing it, basically. Because so many times we've sort of ignored it because of social whatever, oh gosh, well, this person is, I don't know,
I
somebody that,
need this person, or they'll
yeah,
be helpful, or but
yeah,
one word you just used, and I'd like to revisit that because that's one of the biggest takeaways from our chat. And there is so many.
yeah,
Go and listen. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. Listening. We talk about verbal communication
yeah,
and bodily communication. That's not the right word,
yeah.
is it? Bodily communication. That sounds a bit
It's
revolting. But listening is something that we just don't do enough of, do we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I often say, what we call active listening. So really listening. And as humans, and it's normal, we all do it. As humans, we're always sort of thinking about, the next thing we want to say. And, we're having a conversation with somebody and they mention something, we're jumping in with something. And I always say active listening is so important and can really, really, really improve, communication in general, relationships, etc. And I think we don't do enough of it. We absolutely don't do enough of it. And some people don't necessarily know how to do it because, these communication skills are not necessarily skills that we're taught in schools. I mean, I think they should be. I think we should totally
Oh
teach
gosh, yeah.
communication skills in schools. I think they should be absolutely super high up on the curriculum. I think when it comes to communication, I mean, when it comes to humans and relationships, communication is just so critical. We should be teaching these skills, but something like active listening isn't taught.
No.
We don't necessarily know how to do it.
One
So
thing it's taught me obviously part of my coaching, active listening is a massive
yeah,
part of that. But
yeah,
in my personal life, I now realize how many times by not active listening, but in a conversation, I preempted or I assumed I knew how someone, and we know what assume does,
oh
how
yeah,
what someone was going to say or what, and it's like you kind
yeah,
of think you're a mind reader. You're not a mind reader.
yeah,
You
yeah.
don't know what, oh, they're going to react in a certain way. I know what they're going to say. They've said the same thing before, but this time they may not say that thing.
Absolutely. I mean, that's another thing. We are not mind readers.
No.
And, and it's the same thing. Nobody can read our minds either.
Yeah.
So, that's one of the things that I often see in, communication breakdowns is that somebody's sort of saying, well, he should have known or she should know this, but actually, no. And if you don't say it explicitly, then, how can
And
that
it's so
person?
easy for that situation to escalate, isn't it?
Oh,
Particularly in
absolutely.
relationships with loved ones that really can be going through huge changes at this time, whether it's with our partner, our friends, our kids.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness. And now
absolutely.
another great tactic that we talk about in our full length episode that I really would love you to recap on because it's something it's like, yeah, this is powerful. The
Yeah.
power of the pause. Do you see what I did then? I tried to do a bit of a pause then
Ah,
because
I love that.
it is powerful, isn't it? It's a bit of not a weapon because we're not fighting. We're trying to make
Yeah.
this empowering and we're benefiting from it. But
Yes, absolutely. So the power of the pause, again, this is something that I often talk about, is that, in general, when we're having a conversation, we've sort of somehow decided that we don't necessarily like silences. So, for some whatever strange reason, and actually
yeah,
silence can be good. And so what we have in conversations, two-way, we call them dyadic conversations. So two-way conversations is that you often have somebody, stops talking and there's a pause. So the other person rushes to fill in that space. But actually the pause is where, the communication can also happen. It can be a very powerful thing.
Mm.
So, often I'll say to people that I'm working with is that, don't be afraid of silence and don't be afraid of the pause and don't be afraid to pause. Use the pause to your advantage. I do a lot of job interview prepping as well, in some of the schools that I work at, and I'll say that, there's nothing sort of more empowering than actually getting to the end of the sentence. You're introducing yourself. We all know that job interviews, and they're saying, okay, well, tell me a bit about yourself. They've got
Oh,
your CV. They probably haven't read it. So, and you've got your what we call the little elevator pitch.
yeah.
And there's nothing more empowering than getting to the end of that sentence and stopping. And, people sort of start to panic a little bit if they're not used to doing that. And they'll think, oh, hold on, the other person hasn't said anything, so I need to kind of keep going. And that's when we get into sort of like the mumbling and the stumbling and the whatever. And actually, you can just pause. And, that gives the other person the space to then be like, okay, great, brilliant. And what we think is like a lifetime is actually just a few seconds.
Mm.
And they're gathering their thoughts and then they're going to ask you the next question. And it's the same in a conversation. It's the pause can be extremely powerful. It really
Well, I think
can.
as well, we're kind of adding value to what we've just said because we're telling them this
Yeah,
information. And then if we go gabbling on straight into something else, we haven't given them the
yeah,
moment to actually absorb what we've just told them, think
absolutely.
about it, let it
Yeah.
actually get from their ears to their brain, and then let them think, do I need to respond to this? How do I want to respond to this? What does this mean for me? If it's just constant jabbering away.
I mean, sometimes, and often sort of like the jabbering can be a habit. But from the outside, the perception, it can be perceived as sort of like nervousness as
Yeah.
well. So silence can actually communicate authority. So, if you're pausing, and exactly what you said, a pause
I've
can
said
really
something
sort of,
rather fabulous here. Yes, I'm.
yeah, and it can underline it,
Mm.
and you're letting the other person take that in because, we're not machines. We're not sort of, we do need a little bit of and our brains are all so unique and fabulous and wonderful, but we all have a different processing speed. So sometimes, somebody can take oh wow, yeah, that's actually really, really interesting what you just said. And there's a pause.
Particularly now where I'm quite prone to the old brain fog moment. So sometimes someone will tell me something, and I literally, that's one thing. Before we go into your contact details, I will say,
Yeah,
see if you agree with me on this. I find myself, I don't think there's anything, well, I won't say wrong. If I've had a conversation with someone and I haven't, you go and you think, oh, I'll go and put the kettle on now. And then you think, and this is probably more in a personal situation than a business, but it would work in a business. And I kind of think, I'm not clear on the outcome of that conversation. I'm not
yeah.
clear whether I wasn't properly listening, whether my brain's thinking about hummus, I don't know. But to my mind, there's nothing wrong. And actually, it's preferable for me to re-clarify. And it might, with my other
Yeah,
half, he's like, but I told you. And I'm like, yes, I know you did, but I didn't absorb the information.
yeah,
So I would
yeah.
say to someone who's having a brain fog moment, if you think, I'm sure I just had this conversation, but there isn't
Yeah,
anything wrong with saying, can you please tell me again?
absolutely. Seek to clarify something. Always, 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 sort of between what somebody says, what somebody thinks they're saying, what you're um hearing, what you understand, there's a huge, there's a lot of opportunities for miscommunication. And, the only what can I say? Antidote to that is seeking to clarify.
Mm.
I heard this. Was that what you said? Or was that what you? Oh, yes, it was what I said. Oh, was it what you meant? Actually, no, it wasn't what I meant. I actually meant to say this. Oh, okay, right, because I'd heard that and I understood this. I always say seek to
Mm.
clarify, just, why not? And
Well,
okay,
it could also nip potential misunderstanding in the bud, can't it? Because
yeah,
if you're over here and the
yes,
person you're speaking to is there,
yeah,
there
yeah.
might be a chasm of
Oh,
misinformation or
100%. And, it's always as well, I said earlier, you can't read somebody's mind. Absolutely. Who has any idea what's going on with somebody? You might be talking to somebody and thinking, wow, she's being a bit off today, but who knows what's going through
mm,
that person's mind? She might have just had a huge argument with her teenage son. She might have just, physically not feeling whatever. And so we're reading something with just sort of like one lens, if you like. And it's very difficult to get the full picture. And the only way we can get the full picture is by asking somebody. And, we can seek clarity. We can say, you know, I'm sensing that you're not, and the person doesn't have to respond as well. That's the
no,
other thing. That's why communication is so complex and so complicated. Is we can ask for clarity, but we don't necessarily get it either. So then we also have to decide, well, okay, this is what I've understood, and this is what I'm going to go with. So yeah, sometimes,
I
you
love
know.
it. I love it. It's just so much to take on. And I say our audio episode, go and have a listen. It's available now wherever you get your podcasts. Beth's contact details are in the show notes for our audio episode, and you have your guest profile on the Midlife Unlimited podcast website. But for any viewers who are like, I need to have a chat, I need to find out more, how can they connect with you?
So I am pretty active on Instagram. You can go and follow me on Instagram, send me a DM. Also via my website, you have my contact details on my website. You can click a button and it comes straight into my email. And yeah, I offer, 15-minute, no obligation chat. Sometimes that's enough, and sometimes it can give you some insights and, be very helpful, hopefully. Otherwise, yeah, you've got all my details on my website, which I'm refreshing at the minute, actually, updating it. Sometimes you have these things with websites, they sort of leave them for a while and you suddenly
Oh,
realize
yeah.
you need to
It's
go.
all about communication again, though, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So yes, but I would be delighted to hear from, yeah, to hear from your listeners. I am absolutely passionate about communication. I think, yeah, and as you, Kate, I mean, we talked about it. I loved what we talked about on the podcast.
I could do it all over
Um,
again. I'm
yes,
gonna have to get you back and talk about something else. But
yes,
as I say, in the meantime, go and listen to the full-length audio episode. Thank you for watching our video episode. You can go and get more details of me, all my communication details. I don't know what I'm talking about now. I'm so excited. Are on the Midlife Unlimited podcast website, where you can find details of how you can work with me one-to-one, and by joining more, exclamation mark, my all-in-one coaching program that combines one-to-one with group program, and it's all about adding life to your years. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the videos. It means a lot and it helps people find it. So thank you, Beth, for coming back and joining me for our little video chat. I've loved it. I knew I would. Thank you for
you're
watching.
very welcome.
Don't forget there's a new audio episode of Midlife Unlimited every Thursday, available wherever you get your podcasts. So here's to being fabulous and flourishing together and living midlife unlimited. Thanks, Beth. It's been brilliant. Bye.
Thank you, Kate. Bye.